Sports Joe presents House of Rugby, together with Heineken. Get the facts, be drink aware, visit drinkaware.ie.
Hello, and you're all very welcome to House of Rugby with thanks to Heineken. My name is Máire Treasa Ní Dhubhghaill, and I'm delighted to be joined this week by Sene Naoupu and Johne Murphy to look back on Ireland's epic win against the reigning champions on Saturday night, and we'll chat through the other big results from round 3 of the Rugby World Cup as well. But first of all, how are we doing?
Still not better of Saturday evening.
I know, my heart.
Look, it was great. Yesterday was a long day in terms of just kind of getting over the anxiety of what was Saturday evening. But it was a great performance, and one, potentially one for the purists, but they really kind of ground it out, and it's great that they got it in the bag and they move on.
Yeah, it was billed as the game of the tournament, and it certainly lived up to expectations. Sene, you were one of the lucky ones who was there in the stadium on Saturday night. Talk to us about the occasion itself.
Oh, it was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, the last few years, everyone has been looking forward to this game, and you would have heard in various sources of, media clips where, Andy and the whole team have just acknowledged that this was the game that they had targeted in a sense. So it really lived up to the occasion. Huge privilege to be there. Wonderful DJ at the end there as well. I didn't quite catch his name to give him a shout out, but everything about that day I think was just such a wonderful occasion, I think, for the country, but also for South Africa as well. It was I suppose a testament to themselves, the way that they were able to still engage with the fans after the game. Both teams were just so. It was just absolutely wonderful to see, and then obviously a wonderful occasion for Bundy, who's a dear friend of ours, and kind of like another brother to me. So that was a wonderful occasion for his 50th as well to get
absolutely
player of the match.
Was it one of the best atmospheres you've experienced at a rugby game?
100%. Yeah, I've been very, very grateful throughout the year to be involved and be, as a fan and spectator, and support our commercial partners as well with the Six Nations and EPCR and URC and a number of those competitions, regional comps. This is obviously the pinnacle, and it really was a pinnacle weekend. So everyone at the stadium, and obviously everyone in Ireland and all of the Irish around the world, and even if they weren't Irish around the world, were, talking about that game, still talking about that game.
It was said that there was 30,000 Irish there. It felt like there was a lot more on the television. I don't know what it felt like in the stadium, but what sort of a lift does that give a team when they're up against it? Like when it wasn't going Ireland's way, you could hear the support, you could hear the fields of Athenry, and you could really feel it. That's what the players are saying. They could feel it on the pitch. It probably felt for them like a home stadium. Yeah,
definitely. And I think probably the whole game is summed up in one clip that was on social media. There's a South African fan that Fields of Athenry is being sung, and he's actually doing everything he can not to sing. And at the very end, there's this huge roar, and he has this smile on his face. And you're kind of going, that kind of summed up the atmosphere for what it was for us watching from home. It just gave them, it is like a 16th man. And I just think, I was talking to a few people that were there, they said they've never experienced anything like it as well before. One that gutted to have not been there, but I was watching from behind the couch for probably about 60 minutes.
Your fingers like the rest of us.
Just an incredible occasion, and one that will go down, but they were very clear after that, that's just one step on the journey, and on they move. If I heard, that's just 4 points and on we go, that seemed to be the theme of what the post-match press conference was, and on the roll.
Exactly, because I suppose for us looking, this was the start of the World Cup for Ireland. No disrespect to Tonga and Romania, but they were like extended warm-up games. But this is the one everyone spoke about. The pressure they must have felt going into that game, they didn't let on, because the message from the Irish camp that they were sticking to their guns. They knew what they wanted to do. They were sticking to the game plan. A lot of talk of the 7-1 split of the bench and all of that. They weren't going to change what they've been doing up until now. And they certainly delivered on the biggest stage.
Oh, I think it's remarkable I can only imagine how, not tricky isn't the word, but how much it takes as a player to be in that environment and to be focused on the process and in that moment. And it's a testament, I suppose, to the other 2-3 cycles that Johne often alludes to in terms of the invaluable lessons I've learnt out of those, in terms of really utilising that into this and using everything they have possible in and around the environment and on and off the pitch, mental skills, those sorts of things, to really ensure that. I know you mentioned Romania and Tonga were extended warm-up games, but certainly for, the Irish team, they didn't think that at all. They went in full noise in every single game. And similarly to, obviously, South Africa, full noise again, and then again celebrating that moment for what it was. Absolutely outstanding and very extraordinary, and something that they deserved as a team, and then we deserved as a country, and the world deserved as a nation, as a country that has the privilege of watching a World Cup, which is unbelievable. So it was just such a wonderful thing in general for the world of rugby. But I love that they're just focused on Scotland now. A couple of days left with the family, and then they assemble Wednesday night, I think it is, this week in Paris, and then it's just sort of focus all eyes on Scotland. So I love that that's where the mindset is, and no one's getting carried away with anything. But at the same time, it was really important for all of us to celebrate that. That's such a wonderful achievement. So I just thank you to the lads in South Africa for giving us that moment, because it's actually a key step in the next big step, which is Scotland.
Absolutely, because they'll be looking at this, as you said, as a pool game. They got the points that were on offer, but it felt much, much bigger than that, Johne. It was a statement win.
It was, and I think everyone, when the draw came out, and then obviously with the the form of all those those sides on this side of the group, in Ireland, New Zealand, what South Africa did to New Zealand, pre-World Cup, France's form, everything has been focused around kind of those top 4 sides in the world, and I think this was a real, as you said, a real statement performance, because it wasn't as clinical as they would have liked in any way, shape or form, but they found a way, and they got it done. And I think that's what's going to need to happen. They're at the halfway stage in reality. They have a break. The schedule really suits them. There's guys gone to kind of Euro Disney with their families already, which is brilliant to see. They've this 3-4 day block is going to crown them, and then they're hopefully going kind of 4 weeks on the trot from then on. So I think it was very much a statement win, but not in the manner that they probably would have liked. But I think that adds another string to their bow, because they can win a game where at times it's hanging on a knife edge.
When they're not playing at their best.
When they're not playing at their best, and their accuracy levels are not where they need to be. And I think that just proves that, they're proper contenders now.
How will he analyse this performance now that the dust has settled a bit?
I was just going to say, which comes to your question as well. Imagine beating the current world champions and not playing your best.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I mean, South Africa missed 11 points, left 2 tries in the first half, close to the line. Unbelievable defensive reads from Ireland. Second half then, left two tries again, close to the try line. So that's 4. There's 20 points, if not more. At the end of the day, no game is ever going to be perfect. And the beautiful thing about that is, they'll focus on the next game. Only small tweaks to make, really, in terms of the the systems that our line-out callers and jumpers and lifters
Well, they did
have.
misfire at the line-out. They lost the first 4, but I suppose one of the big things is the heads didn't drop. They lost 5 in the first 20 minutes, but they were able to turn it around. But definitely they're the work-ons that they will be focusing on. And they were bullied at times in the scrum as well. Did you see anything that isn't fixable or anything that would concern you?
Not really. I think 2
backs here now.
Yeah, but I think as kind of said, as has already alluded to, the opportunity to improve is massive, because 50% in your line outs, they had, I think, 2 or 3 scrum penalties, and I think that those opportunities to improve are what they're going to focus on over the next kind of 10 days in when they get back into camp. But as a coach, everything is fixable. They have seen what probably the best defensive line out in the world is like, gone up against it. We just hope that this could hopefully be a final where those two teams go at it properly and they're both executing at their highest level, because I think that would be a game that everyone in World Rugby wants to see. But from a coaching perspective, you look for a couple of non-negotiables, and Paul would have always, when we played with him, would have been always big on those 1%ers and those talentless tasks that he talks about, those tasks that just require getting up off the ground, no talent required whatsoever. They won all those battles. They were quicker to their feet. They clung on to defensive tackles literally by their fingernails, and that's massive. The talent, they know they have the talent that they can execute at the highest level, because they've proved it time and time again over the last 18 months. When they get rocking at line-out time and get into their phase play, they're going to be very, very hard to beat.
Yeah, you mentioned the defence there, and a lot of talk has been about South Africa's defence, their blitz defence. They have one of the best defensive systems in the world, but Ireland will be very happy with their performance when it comes to defending the line, and the box threw everything at them. But like Johnny said, they were so quick off the ground every time, and when they had nothing left to give, they gave it. Honestly,
I could watch the fluidity of the way that Ireland defend all day long. And what I mean by fluidity is when you they win the collision first and foremost, so they make that dominant hit and it makes it easier for the fold to go around. But you just watch how seamless that is. It's absolutely unbelievable. Just obviously they don't get it right every time, because when you do make the gain line, you naturally retract back as a defensive shape. But most of the time, percentage-wise, is quite high for Ireland as a defensive team. But when they do win the collision, it makes it easier for that sort of fluidity around the breakdown. Mm-hmm. They all come up and then close off that space for South Africa. And that in itself was just a sight to see. Your Gary Ringroses coming out on the outside, because he knew that the inside guys would be there, so he can afford to go shoot right up on the high. And then you're sort of got your inside guys, you got from your breakdown 1, 2, 3, and they can push right up onto that first receiver.
Were you able to see anything different, or from being in the stadium, that we wouldn't have seen on television? Any players working off the ball or things like that?
You always see the back three. I'm always fascinated by the back three and how the attack see where the space is based on the back three as well. Because in this day and age, the defensive line close right up. So the options on attack are either your dinks over top, or far in the corner, or down straight, or you will have to just carry the ball. So I'm always fascinated at the dynamic of your Hugos. Lowy was absolutely outstanding. Lowy was James Lowe, sorry, and obviously Mac Hansen as well. But the way that they move and work with Jamison Gibson-Park as a 9, and the system that Ireland has, where Jamison is in the position that he is, he comes from the inside and then out to the wings. So the way that works, and then the transition is something special to see. I'm not sure if people notice that, but a lot of the time when Ireland are scoring their tries, they're excellent, obviously, at set-piece execution, scoring unstructured defence. But in unstructured defence, on a transition defensive positioning like that, like game over if they execute against Scotland.
Well, Andy Farrell was asked about the inaccuracies in the set piece at the start of the game when he spoke to the media after the game, and this is what he had to say.
Well, again, that's the quality of the Springboks. That's the quality of the opposition that's got to be coming. The more that we're able to stay in this competition and keep moving on. So, but keeping ourselves on track mentally and staying at it was absolutely the key. And I thought our discipline certainly in the second half was very good within the line out, and it was roles reversed, wasn't it, in regards to the penalty, the early engage from South Africa and the penalty that we got on their line for us to keep the goal. So again, we stayed at it mentally, and rolled with the punches, as you say, but came out strong the other side as well.
Yeah, they definitely rolled with the punches. And as we were saying, it's a sign of a great team that they're able to win when not playing at their best. And they won't rest on their laurels now.
No, not at all. And I think that it just gives them an opportunity that they've something clearly to focus on in terms of, their individual and collective improvements at set piece. And then I'd say they probably felt they missed a couple of things, particularly when they got some turnovers in that transition, in the first half. Byrne probably forces a pass over the top to Keelan Doris. Those little kind of things where they're a bit anxious and trying to create a bit of momentum. But I think they got that right in the second half. And I just think that, their mental capacity and their mental fortitude to deal with all of those mistakes, just keep going. And Pete O'Mahony getting that turnover at line out time, getting up in front of Etzebeth, getting that line out in the 22, James Lowe, we've already mentioned him, putting in that hit towards the end before Etzebeth goes off and holding up, getting that scrum, for a maul there. It's just incredible. But they just stuck to their process. They clearly have incredible belief in what they're trying to do. And they just believe if they keep going, the scoreboard will look after itself. Quite cliched, but very hard to stick to in the cauldron that was Saturday evening.
Exactly. And I suppose when it comes to tactics as well, they weren't going to change anything. A lot was talked about when we mentioned earlier about the 7-1 split on the bench, but Ireland have never picked a 6-2 split under Andy Farrell. He wasn't going to change now. They were going to stick to their guns. And it shows, as Johnny said there, the character of this team, that they were able to stick with the approach that they had practiced time and time again and that had worked out for them.
It was a blockbuster distraction during the week, that 7-1, wasn't it? But of course, like as John, you alluded to, the process, it was all about, in terms of what they had been training for this moment. Like, so that week was just, the last game was excellent to see it all unfold and their plan work, to what they'd worked so hard for. And it's incredible to see the world-class DNA, obviously, of the Irish players and the way that the guys have come together, but they must be incredibly fit, not just mentally fit, but that level of consistency across a tournament like this and the level of consistency across the 80 minutes. And I mean, we spoke about...
With no injuries
as well. And we spoke about not being their best. Well, they played the best in the world, as in the world champs. And so in terms of that pressure, they played like that, for example, against Scotland, and the score, there's probably going to be a bit of a gap, maybe, but there's just, I'm genuinely in awe, just from a level of appreciation of being a player in that environment, like fair play. And
I think that, the bench, their capacity to get in and get into the firing line straight away, there was no acclimatisation at all. You look at Finlay Bealham, he was straight in. He was rock solid at scrum time when he came on. You look at Conor Murray, when he gets that penalty for Ireland with his experience.
He was so calm, so
just
composed.
Calm, just had complete influence over the game. He's smart at that penalty last, not to throw the ball in straight away when Ireland are probably, the momentum is in Ireland's favour there because they've got a turnover. Byrne has kicked the ball up. They've got that chance. There could be let's go. He's just so calm. Lets them engage and push early penalty. That's the game. And it just
they all made an impact. They all added to the game.
Yeah, hugely. And that, I suppose, was something that was probably in the backs of their minds mentally because, as we said already, the distraction that the 7-1 split had caused throughout the week and talking about the bomb squad and all of that. I'd say the Irish lads were like, well, hold on a second, we'll do something here. Like even Jack, like dropping back for the drop goal for that scrum. Like people are saying, we got a bit of luck there because it's blocked down. That was a sweetly struck drop goal. That was going over. And, they're still in the same position there. They have to hold out. Okay, they get an extra minute because it's minute and a half because it's a scrum, then penalty. But he came on and he was like, okay, I'm going to win this game. Yeah. I'm going to knock over this drop goal and then we're going to close it out. That's just incredible. It really is. I think our bench was was so good coming on.
And he got the combinations beautifully as well. I thought Jake Crowley was relaxed because he had Connor outside him, and he's obviously used to playing with Connor, and those might seem small, but it's huge, and it meant Connor could be that kind of leader and the game managers of the inside backs.
The players seem more comfortable, and we've mentioned their character, in adapting to situations. And Paul O'Connell mentioned this in the press conference leading up to the game, that he said the onus was on the players to read the game, to make changes when it came to crunch time. And it just shows the resilience that these players have. And that was one of the first words that came out of Andy Farrell's mouth in the press conferences after the game, was resilience. He was so proud of the resilience this team showed. And a lot of work has been done on the mental side of the game. Gary Keegan has been mentioned a lot. He's the performance coach in there. How important is that to practically put into practice when you're in the thick of it?
Massive. And I think, I would have used sports psychs throughout my career. It's very much, they give you cues, and there's individual cues and collective cues. That's to bring you back down, but then also to go up. You see what they're doing with their breathing at the moment. They're not the only team in World Rugby that's doing this. New Zealand have been using it for years. Probably comes from an army background in terms of, those elite special forces that are able to kind of connect through breath in dark situations where they can move forward.
It's pretty dark at times against South Africa.
And I think that just grounds everyone. It gets the collective back together, and it's huge, and then you'll see that different players will have different individual cues. Some of them won't tell you what they are, but they have them. Be it, I used to use my left sock, so preparation would have started on my left and moved forward up, and if I made a mistake, I dropped my sock, breathe, reset, you feel you're back in the game.
Okay.
And there's a lot of phraseology around kind of being big at the moment, which is just get back in game. And I think that's, if you can have that philosophy of being big, it not just comes from physical, but also mental, that your approach is, right, regardless of what just happened, I'm back in the game straight away, back in the game. And you look at the mistakes that were made, line out time, we've already talked about that. Tyg Byrne, gives away 2 penalties that are probably, they're on the silly side. One, particularly at maul time when he changes his bind. But he's the one that stops the maul in the last minute. He gets in good position, doesn't change his bind, and forces, the maul obviously collapses and we win the game. So it just shows you the individual preparation, how good that is, and the ability for someone like that just to, okay, well, that's gone. This is what I need to do, and I know what I'm doing. It's incredible. It's
always on to the next thing, isn't it, Sene? What has your experience been like working with sports psychologists and the importance of it?
Yeah, and Ken Hodge and a lot of researchers have always said this for a number of years, and a lot of elite teams use it. And it's basically that high performance in sport is 90% mental and 10% physical. So it's it's one of the key things that is obviously keeping the team focused and onto the next job. But we've used mental skills coaches for a number of years, probably over 20 years in my career. And it's in the women's program there's an investment in some mental skills coaches there as well, and performance support in that respect. So it's the same as the men, especially in campaigns like a World Cup, where it's nothing like you'd ever experience unless you're a player and a coach in that environment. And that's why it's quite fascinating to watch from the outside and see how it's really impressive. I think it's incredibly impressive the way that the Ireland men are carrying themselves.
Physically and emotionally, what will a performance like that take out of the team? Now, we know the break has come at the right time for Ireland. We're very lucky the way it has fallen. It would have been a very different week had we lost, and that they're building up to Scotland on the back of a defeat. But how much will that take out of them?
Oh, your energy levels will be sapped physically. Mentally, it'll be a lot easier to get yourself back together physically because it's after a win. But it's draining. And I think, I've already said it, the break is perfect for them. It gives them an opportunity to completely switch off. And build themselves back up with their loved ones, their family. There's a lot of kids gone out, and it just allows them just completely switch off, which is very much needed. needed. And I think historically for Ireland in World Cups, we've had these victories before, be it Australia, New Zealand, in 2011. That, the height of that, then you're straight back into another game. There's no chance to
against France as well.
It's to go up and then to be able, what goes up has to come down, and it's to be able to then restart from the ground and go on. It's very hard to do that, as Sene's already said, in terms of that kind of heartbeat momentum to go up, back down, and start all over again. A lot of teams, while they get unstuck, is they go up, they come halfway down, and then try to go back up again, and that's mentally draining. So. I think, but we're in a really good spot, and now they have to back up this performance that we've had historically. And if they do that against Scotland, I think it's going to be a really, really enjoyable 4 weeks for everyone.
16 wins in a row now for Ireland. What will this do for the belief of the players that they have that win against the reigning champions under their belt?
To be brutally honest, I honestly think that they've acknowledged that they won. They beat the current world champs. But I genuinely think they're literally focused on the next job right now. But in terms of, say, what you're saying, obviously morale will be positive and strong and good. And it's probably good that they made some mistakes. It's probably the best thing for them as a squad, that they just had that to sharpen the saw for the next game. I'd like to see a few changes come in just to, freshen the load, especially in the front row as well. Someone like Andrew Porter was outstanding in that game. So, whether he needs to have a break at the start of the game, someone like Finlay Bealham to come in at the front row.
Jack Conan maybe?
Jack Conan in the back row as well was an option. And in the centres, you've got Henshaw, who's also available, and could easily have a start without making a dent in any of the performance outcomes.
Would you be worried about making too many changes?
I'd be conscious of who the 10 is, the out half on the bench. I would be conscious of who is brought in there out of Jack Crowley or Ross Byrne. Out of those two, I'd be really conscious to see who of those two would make that squad against Scotland, to be honest.
Do you feel like changes need to be made to keep the energy up?
I
freshen
think,
things?
And I think the guys who are coming back in now, it's probably worthwhile having, someone like Jimmy O'Brien involved, just in terms of his versatility and what he covers. Having him at 23 allows you probably be a bit more versatile on the bench. But I think whoever you pick, for me, I wouldn't worry too much about too many changes, because when you sit down to pick the 23 out of the 33 that are out there, you can make a case for more or less everyone. You look at how Murr played when he came off the bench. Does he start? You're changing, or there's so many different arguments for every player, so it's very hard to kind of to pick that. But I do think it's important that guys get enough game time that if they're asked on to come on very early in the hopefully in the quarter final, that they don't gas themselves, so that there is enough match fitness across, particularly those front row guys, that they're able to step up. You would imagine, regardless of how Ronan Kelleher played this weekend, Dan Sheehan was probably going to start against Scotland anyway, for that reason. Get his fitness back up and his game, where he get his kind of match fitness up to a full 80 minutes, or in his position, full 60, because that's really probably what he's going to do anyway. So, I'd say I would expect potentially up to 4 or 5 changes maybe. But when you see it, people just go, oh yeah, well, okay, I get that. It's not
all of it makes sense. In Andy we trust.
I thought Henderson was absolutely outstanding when he came in. The detail of his leg drive and the way he just cleared that initial breakdown that actually kicked off the momentum of us eventually getting the penalty was unbelievable. And I imagine maybe a consideration, maybe in the second row, whether he has an opportunity to start and whether it suits their game plan. That's the other thing, is in whether their strategy and tactic for the game plan against a team like Scotland is obviously their threat to Finn Russell and in our half position, who are their open side flankers going to be, who's going to be the side of the scrum to sort of take that side 10, 12, 13. But I also hope, I know he probably needs a rest, Bundy, but I also hope he does get a game here. I think he's on a trajectory.
A momentum player.
He's 100% on a trajectory in this campaign, and game by game we're seeing the best of him, and in credit to the boys around him as well, and the environment he's in, he's able to thrive. So I think if he continues this momentum as a player, and then just what he does as well in the environment, his energy in general, he has a good shot of making player of the tournament if he keeps going.
Absolutely.
Game by game, though.
Game by game. Well, after such an attritional game, both mentally and physically, Andy Farrell was asked by the media after the game on Saturday night what he hopes to do to ensure that they can take it to another level as the tournament progresses.
I think as the competition goes on, we'll need to be better, because there's a few bits of inaccuracies, but there's always going to be that type of thing with games like this, especially with the pressure that South Africa put on you. But we again was able to find a way. And when you say it was an emotional game, and how do we bottle that? We've got very good at not getting too emotional and making sure that we stay on task. So getting the game in like that within the pool stage is great for us.
Yeah, always with the message staying on task. They're looking after their own camp. But touching on the Springboks before we move on to other results, we haven't seen the end of them, of course. And had they kicked some of those kicks that went astray, they left 11 points out there, it would be a completely different story today.
Yeah, I do. I think kind of there's a bit of a token in that if our line-out had functioned as well.
Absolutely.
And people are saying that, the referee missed a couple of things and we got the rub of the green. But, for their try, they're probably going to score anyway. Mac Hansen gets kind of taken off the ball. Their players in front of the ball. You can't get the ball from front, so you're offside. So okay, they still had a 3-on-1 overlap that they probably would execute anyway. Again, for Burns' kick, leading up just to before the penalty, Hansen gets taken out off the ball in a kick chase situation. So there's kind of, I think it's very much 50-50. What I was surprised at and what worried me was their as they got later into the game, they were trying to move the ball a lot more, get their back three into the game. They looked very, very dangerous when they started to do that, and only for incredible defence out wide. At times, they were literally an Irish fingernail away from getting a hands free and an offload into those. So their ability to play, and I think when they analyse that as a group of coaches, they'll be like, okay, well, we can actually play a bit more. And if they play a bit more with the power they have, it's going
a very dangerous prospect.
Very, very dangerous prospect. I genuinely think they're going to be in the final. I just think with the injuries that France have, if they end up playing them, I think they're finalists for me. They're that good, and I just think that Rassie, obviously, like Andy, he has that group really, really primed.
And they won't panic.
No, not at all. And you can see after how deadpan Jacques Nienaberg is after, and he's very clear, they did
it in 2019,
were
beaten by New Zealand, went all the way.
Yeah.
They laughed at that question they were asked after the game, can you still go all the way?
Yeah, it's interesting, the different mental, it's not even a tactic, but when Andy's asked a question, they're focused on the next job. But in terms of media asking them questions, South Africa, the way that they navigate, I think is really, really interesting as well on that, because I've done it before. On your point as well, 11 points from the tee, or 11 points on missing, but also we counted about, I think I mentioned before, on any other day they would have scored those 4 tries. Yeah. There's 20 points when you think about it, which just shows how fierce for the killing of momentum the Irish defence is.
Yeah.
And their ability
it's such fine margins.
Yeah. At that level, it's tiny margins.
And it was such a brutally physical game, but credit to both sides. There were no cards shown. They didn't go to the TMO at any point. It just shows how disciplined and controlled both sides are.
Yeah, it was a fair fight, start to finish, and they accepted that. And you can even see how, the mutual respect after the games. How Khaleesi speaks after, how Johne speaks after. There's clearly a very high mutual respect there between the players.
And you had a Munster second row.
Yeah. So I just think that's they're two teams that realise how good each other are, but also how good of an opposition each other are too.
And I thought sorry to jump in, I thought it was why it was such an important game for the World Cup in general, because how wonderful for kids to see you can play a game like that and not get cards. Yeah. You can, incredible sportsmanship and the loss that they took with grace, and then even Ireland as a team, like they won with grace as well. Just all of it around it that in itself was just such a wonderful thing to celebrate in general.
Yeah.
So, credit to both teams on their day.
If they were to pitch up against each other next week, Johne?
I'd still back Ireland. I'd back Ireland all the time. I just think it's different at the moment, and great teams win ugly and when they don't play their best, and that was a case in point on Saturday evening.
It was a game for the ages, and we are certainly not finished talking about it yet, but we'll look at the other results. Italy produced a second half comeback to beat Uruguay on Wednesday night. That was their second win of the tournament. It finished 38-17. Emphatic win for the hosts on Thursday. France racked up 96 points against Namibia. 96-0 is what that finished. Argentina are still on track to make the quarterfinals. They beat Samoa on Friday night. That game finished 19-10. Highly entertainment and dramatic game in Pool C on Saturday. Heartbreak for Portugal just at the end. That game finished in a draw 18-18. Owen Farrell was back for England. They dispatched Chile 71-0. Probably one of the most impressive performances from England under Steve Borthwick, and Scotland did what they needed to against Tonga to keep their World Cup hopes alive, and that finished 45-17. And Wales were very comfortable winners against Australia last night, and for the first time ever Australia have not made it past the pool stages. That game finished 46. So if we briefly touch on France, I suppose it really was a statement performance by them on Thursday.
Yeah, look, they're going to be, hard to beat. But I do think that the injuries that they've suffered are really going to hurt them. Dupont is the best player in the world. He plays on cheat mode every game he plays, and for us, it's similar for us losing Johne, and we've all spoken about this over the last kind of 6 to 8 weeks. That if we can keep Johne fit, we've a chance. It's probably even bigger for France because he is their talisman and he is just an exceptional talent. So that's going to be hard. And they've already lost Antamac, so that's going to be difficult for them to manage. But I do hope, for the sake of the competition, that
everyone wants to see Dupont play.
Wants to see him. Yeah. We can get him back, and hopefully he can feature in the later rounds. They'll be doing everything they can to get him back. But I do think,
is it a possibility to see him for the quarterfinals, or?
Well, you remember Harry Nordique wore the kind of face mask when
Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, exactly. So we might see something like that. Who knows?
They might be not as thick these days.
Yeah. So there is a chance, and whatever can be done will be done.
Yeah, none of us want to see Dupont out of the World Cup. Do you think France have the capability to keep on winning without him?
Oh, though, this next game will be interesting, but losing himself and Intermac is a huge loss. Obviously, the two key game managers. I think they can still do it. Like, France's depth is, gives a chance for, the other guys to step up. But both of them out, it obviously just it changes a lot. It changes the X factor of their tactic that they have. Changes that nuance that only he can do. Yeah. For any team, for a team like France. So, next game will be interesting.
If we look at Wales now, Warren Gatland has always said Wales are a momentum team, and they certainly have momentum. It was an outstanding performance by them last night.
Yeah, it was. As well as a kind of a mixture of kind of, I suppose, implosion by the Australians.
Yes.
They probably started to chase it a bit too much, and then they just couldn't handle it at all. For me, it was like watching a different sport nearly, compared to what it was the night before. But that side of the draw has the opportunity to, you have the opportunity to build momentum. You look at England, Wales, for me, are going to win that group, and I don't think they're the best team in that group. I think Fiji are. Wales were lucky to get past Fiji. But Wales are a tough side to play against. They're big, they're physical, they defend well, and they've got quality players. So anyone who plays against them, it's going to be difficult. Mm-hmm. It is going to be difficult.
And they can perform at World Cups.
They can. They just have that knack. But, the form of that, we won't know how good a performance that was last night until they play again because of the way Australia performed.
Yeah, that was the first time Australia haven't got out of their pool game in the history of the World Cup. What now for them?
Yeah, it's I'm feeling for the guys. I mean, Alan Alatoa, who was the usual captain as well, he was injured before the campaign. They obviously lost Tupper, and haven't got Quay Cooper either, and a number of other guys who were out for no reason at all. Actually, I'm not sure why they weren't selected. But in terms of that team themselves, I genuinely think that as the inflection of the game in general, overall, there's always going to be a team or two that are going to have to hit rock bottom for in terms of change management on anything. Whether it's a development of a new global competition where regional comps are aligned, domestic comps and all that stuff, Reg 9 and Reg 9 sorted and those sorts of things. There's always going to be one or two teams, traditional teams, that unfortunately will have to be the ones that suffer the brunt of it. Yeah. But in terms of Australia, as you mentioned, for a number of reasons, mental and physical, they obviously weren't up to standard for a World Cup and to the legacy of what Australia rugby is all about. And Australia as a union is really important to the game globally. So I'm feeling for the guys. Hey, I've been part of a traditional team that has literally hit rock bottom, and the best thing about that is that there's only one way to go. But at the same time, I just hope and pray that they're,
But like last November, you thought that was the start of their upward trajectory, because it finished 13-10 against Ireland in November, and then it's just capitulated since.
Regardless of, anyone's personal opinions of Eddie Jones and what he's done, it has been a case of anything that can go wrong has gone wrong. Will Skelton in his suit yesterday, you see him, like what difference would he have made yesterday? Just one person. Like, he has been, Leinster's thorn over the last couple of years with what he's done in La Rochelle, his leadership ability. And you look at Eddie Jones in the post-match press conference, he's a shadow of himself. And he's kind of toeing the line, and he's trying, but you can hear the quiver in his voice when he says, this is, even though it's going to be some of their worst moments of their career, it's their best learning opportunity. I think he could have managed that, and he'll admit that a bit better by having a bit more experience littered throughout the squad when he picked it. But that's the road they went down, unfortunately, and they really have unravelled. And it is, as a powerhouse of, two-time winner, a powerhouse of the game, it's difficult to see. And they're facing, they're facing a Lions tour in 2 years. We want Lions tours to be really competitive. It's a huge, not just commercial, but everything. It's a huge identity. And you just hope that in the next 2 years, they really do get back on track.
They've also got the next World Cup as well.
Yeah.
It's also at a place in the country where it's probably the fourth sport. You've got your NFL first, AFL, and even the Wallaroos have made their sport number 3 almost, I think, in the country, and then rugby. So there's that challenge as well as a national governing body to make sure that they can build on for the next pinnacle.
Well, this World Cup, next up for Ireland, we have Scotland. What impressed you about their win over the weekend? They'll believe that they have a fighting chance to get out of this group.
Yeah. I was impressed by their ability to execute space. I think Finn Russell had a really good game. But also, on the other hand, Tonga gave him time to do what he does best.
Which South Africa didn't.
Yes, exactly. And which is something that there's no way Ireland will, that's not in the DNA for Ireland to let teams be their best. So I think, some of their threats, obviously he's probably the number one. And if you take guys like him out and then their weapons in the back three and in the back row as well.
So how do they nullify Finn Russell's
I think
impact?
you go after kind of line speed, being able to fill the field defensively is very important, and just building kind of building good line speed, and showing them pictures where forcing him either back inside, like what happened against South Africa, or forcing him to kick the ball. I think Sene's already mentioned about our back three and our pendulum work in terms of how they work in that 13-2 system. Forcing him to kick, like there wasn't very many, if any, bouncing balls the other night. So I think we can manage that. We'll manage the air very well. But we have to take away their time and space on the ball. Yeah. There's been a few clips where their work off the ball, I think, from a Scottish perspective, in a team that wants to play with width, isn't where it needs to be to execute that. They actually had opportunities against Scotland to execute, but guys out wide aren't in that space. They probably don't have... They have incredible athletes in the back three, and Van der Merwe is that, but is his work off the ball as good as Mac Hansen's? Probably not, and that doesn't get him enough involvement for me. So, it's about kind of eating up their time and space, and showing them a full line and forcing Russell back into the pocket or back inside, and that's ultimately where he doesn't want to go. So that's what you have to force him to do.
Oh, it's all very interesting. Well, Ireland will be focused on beating Scotland to top Pool B, and we'll have a lot more in-depth chat about that next week. My thanks to Johne and to Sene. We'll be back on House of Rugby next week to look ahead to Ireland's Pool B fixture against Scotland on House of Rugby with thanks to Heineken. Until then, slán go fóill.
Sports Joe presents House of Rugby, together with Heineken. Get the facts, be drink aware, visit drinkaware.ie.